So here's some basic Ayurvedic tips to survive dystopia. Welcome to the Wisdom of the Body podcast. I'm your host, Heather Grzych. Here, we talk about the profound connection between mind, body, and spirit. Join me and other authors, wellness experts, and everyday individuals talk about the importance of listening to our bodies, trusting our guts, and living in deeper harmony with nature. So, whether you're seeking guidance on your wellness journey or simply looking for inspiration, you're in the right place. We're thrilled to be in the top 3% of podcasts globally. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and most other places where people listen to podcasts. You can follow by joining my email list at heathergrzych.com or by following me on Instagram at Heather Grzych. That's Heather, Grzych. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Hi, and welcome back to the Wisdom of the Body. I'm going to start today's episode with a little confession for you. I'm obsessed with two things that are ancient and things that could happen in the future. The ancient fascinates me because it holds timeless wisdom about the body, the mind, how we live our individual lives, and also how we live in society, why things are the way they are. And the future fascinates me because it's unpredictable. It's sometimes thrilling, and it's sometimes terrifying. And that's exactly why I'm writing science fiction now, because I just love terrifying things. No, just kidding. I find it fun to think about how the future might be. But everybody asks me when I tell them that I'm writing science fiction now, they always ask, is the future utopian or dystopian? And I have to say, every time someone asks me this question, I feel stumped because I think every time has elements of both utopia and dystopia. I mean, even today we live in a world that has pockets of utopia, whether everything is perfectly arranged for us and we have all the food that we want and everything that we want and creativity and progress. And yet at the same time, we have dystopian realities. We have mounting plastic trash in the ocean. We have chaos. We have war. We have stress. So in any time, there are both elements of utopia and dystopia. So today we're going to just talk about a little bit more this dystopian side, because I think when people are thinking about sci-fi, they tend to think more about dystopia. And specifically, I want to talk about how Ayurveda can actually help us survive and thrive when the world feels a little bit upside down, whether that's in reality or in our sci-fi future. And when you study Ayurveda, one of the things that you learn is you learn how to live in harmony with the elements. This is one of the basic skills that you learn when you're studying Ayurveda. We also learn what to do when the elements are not favorable to our health and well-being, whether that's weather, environment, or climate. The time and the space that one lives in, this is one of the big influencers of our wellness. We know that the people that we're around affect us. We know that air conditioning affects us. We know humidity affects us. We know air pollution affects us. We know how much sun and light we're getting in a given day, how much vitamin D we're getting from sun on our skin. So we have to adapt as we see things around us change. And this is one of the drivers behind seasonal routine changes in Ayurveda. So whether that's going from summer to fall, or from a good air quality day to one filled with noxious fumes and particles, what is essential is our ability to adjust and to see that this change is happening and to make the right change for our health. So in a dystopia, there's a couple different types of dystopias that you see in fiction or science fiction or other types of fiction. Sometimes this weather is harsh and extreme. And weather often mirrors the chaos or the oppression or the intensity or the stagnant energy around you. So sometimes the environment is this representation of the things going on in society or in your body. And so in a dystopia, sometimes it's harsh and extreme. So maybe it's acid rain or an unrelenting heat, a heat dome, or dust storms. And this harsh and extreme environment or weather in a dystopian future, it would literally make survival physically challenging. You'd need a lot of equipment to deal with this. And other types of dystopia will have, weather that's perpetually gloomy. So maybe there's smog and the sky is always gray. There's just constant rain happening. People are almost like living in a black and white film. And when that is there, then the mood, the energy is going to feel really super drained in that perpetual gloomy environment. And then there are other types of dystopias where everything's really unpredictable and chaotic. And sometimes that's combined with harsh and extreme. But when it's unpredictable and chaotic, there could be big weather events like sudden flood or a freeze or a big, huge storm. Like I think about that big storm in Dune and, certainly hurricanes, big, huge weather events. And these weather events, they disrupt where people live. They might have to move from one place to another. And you just never get any peace because everything is always on edge. You never know how the weather is going to be. And then in some dystopias, the weather's actually artificially controlled. And that's a whole other different type of dystopia. So when the weather is artificially controlled, it's always sunny perhaps, or always just, 65 and sunny and perfect. But that perfection and that every day being the same feeling can actually start to feel unnaturally consistent and kind of drive people crazy that the weather never changes. Maybe some people will look at that as utopia, but after a while it can sort of turn into dystopia because the truth is that things are always changing and weather is meant to change and nothing's always meant to be the same all the time. So you get this super weird, unnatural sameness all the time. And yes, it sounds like it's perfect, but then it's creepy. Okay, so in a dystopia, the weather is rarely comfortable. It's going to challenge resilience. It's going to test your adaptability. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, it's going to directly impact your doshas. So Vata is going to get anxious when there's tons of wind and cold and wind events, erratic weather. And Pitta, which is that high fire element dosha, that's going to overheat when a person is under relentless sun or when there's a lot of fire and intensity or war, that's going to really kick up the pitta. And kapha is going to stagnate when there's gray, that sort of black and white weather, that smoggy, or if it's kind of soppy, dampy all the time. So in a dystopia, even the skies themselves are part of your survival calculus, right? So certainly your well-being calculus. And in a dystopia, things can become so crazy that they become part of your survival calculus. So how do we stay balanced? What can we learn from sci-fi? What can we learn about characters that have endured harsh conditions or other very uncomfortable, unpleasant environmental conditions? What can we learn from those things that can teach us how to stay balanced when the world feels off kilter in some way, whether that's today or in the future? So here's some basic Ayurvedic tips to survive dystopia. Okay, so first, one of my favorite protective practices that came from Ayurveda is this practice of nasya, which is nasal oiling. And you administer herbal oils or just even plain oils or even ghee up your nose in your nasal passage. Can go just in the nostrils or can go even deeper to help, protect your sinuses, sometimes to clear them from things as well. And also to calm your mind and protect against environmental stressors. This is one of my most favorite things to recommend to people actually in a fire season, which we get a lot in California where I live, which I wouldn't necessarily call California where I live right now a dystopian reality. But sometimes there is an element of dystopia, like the day we woke up and the skies were orange because there were fires. You get a little bit of that here and there. Luckily, we don't have every day like that, but sometimes the weather really is creepy in some places. And you've got to do things that are a little different than you would on a pleasant day. So in conditions when there's like wind or dust or heat extremes, doing nasya, this nasal oiling, will help keep your inflammatory processes balanced. It'll help protect against dryness, cracking, and things like that. And it can really help calm a person and protect their respiratory system. So that's my favorite practice for a dystopian world is nasya. And then I would say, and it's really good for vata and pitta specifically, because I feel like when I think about dystopias, I think about them more as futures where both vata and pitta, those doshas are more increased, more high air element, high space element, high fire element in those dystopian realities. Another thing that I would recommend in a dystopian world would be to build something. So when the world feels unstable, this vata dosha that we have can run wild and a person can become anxious or scattered and restless. And one way to calm it is to create something. So whether that's to build something with wood or any kind of craft that you do, or to, learn a new skill, a language, just building something, or baking. Baking is a big one. Remember how so many people started baking bread in the pandemic? And it wasn't just about food, it was about building something tangible when the structures around us felt like they were crumbling. I mean, creating and learning or progressing every day on something will restore stability and strengthen someone's inner resilience. So when things start to feel like the floor has come out from underneath us, building something is really, really calming and soothing and very good for people's mental well-being in a dystopian future. Or like I remember in WALL-E, the movie WALL-E, how he fixes things that are broken, I mean, he like lives in a world of trash and he like builds things, he repairs them, he puts things together. And I think that's just a really great practice for a dystopia. Yeah. Okay. Another thing people can do in a dystopia is grow herbs indoors. So you can grow herbs on your windowsill and it's very practical and healing. And I would focus in a dystopian world, herbs that are antibacterial or demulcent herbs. Demulcent herbs are ones that plump up your tissues. They make you retain water in the tissues a little bit more so they can protect you when your body is more like wet and say like your mucous membranes are nice and wet and juicy. That can kind of like protect you more from environmental insults. So these demulcent herbs I think are great to have around as well. And anything that boosts your immune system, right? So tulsi is good. Mint, very good cooling herb, and also cilantro, which is really, really good and anti-inflammatory. That cilantro one is good to have around. So like if you get, something inflamed on your body, you can make a paste of cilantro and like put that on your skin even as an herbal paste to cool it off. Very good. So herbs will purify the air. Having plants, indoor plants is really nice because they will purify the air. And that's really good for your immunity and just giving you a sense of connection to nature, even when the outside world is chaotic and you might feel like you have less access to nature in a dystopian world. So growing herbs is great. And another thing somebody can do in a dystopian world is to stick to a routine, kind of like what I was saying about building something. This is similar where it's like you do the same things at the same time every day. And I don't know, maybe you do or do not have a clock in this world. I don't know if there's power in the dystopia, but even if there's not power, you can watch the sun when it comes up and you can do things when the sun rise up. You can habit stack around the sun, if you will. And doing things and sticking to a routine is really, really great for the nervous system. So, because chaos is stressful, chaos, not knowing, uncertainty, all these things are very stressful. So our nervous systems, they calm more when there's a rhythm, right? So you feel differently when you listen to jazz music because it's unpredictable and you don't know when the beat is coming. That tends to give us more of that sense of anxiety. And some people like that. But when you're already like, surrounded by chaos, that can be really, really, really not soothing for people. So beats that are predictable, right? Similar. So sticking to a routine gives you that predictable beat. You know when it's going to come. So you wake up at the same time, you eat at the same time, you move at the same time, you rest at the same times. And that kind of consistency will anchor your body, your mind, and that keeps that vata dosha, that too much air element, from running wild, and very calming and soothing. And then this last one I'm going to add. So this is sort of like my top 5 tips for the dystopian world. This one's similar to the first one. So I said, oil your nose in the first one, nasya, right? Oil the inside of your nose. Well, this one's oiling your ears. So inside your ears can also be very calming and soothing. And also when the air quality is bad around you, it's not just your nasal passage that the bad air quality is getting into. You have other orifices in your body that are also open. So ear oiling, it's called karnapurna in Ayurveda speak, which is the language of Sanskrit. And it protects the ears. It calms the nervous system, and it shields the body from these harsh climates, whether that's wind. Oh my God, especially from wind. Have you ever gone out in really super cold wind and had your ears hurt? Well, something like really windy, cold, dust, or dry air can make your ears feel so much better to have oil put in them. And it's one of these things where you like put it in your ear on one side, you let it go all the way in, and then you do the other side, you let it sit for a while, and then you let it leak out, so you also want to get the oil out. So it can also have a little bit of like a cleansing property to it as well. When you oil your ears, it can take out stuff that's stuck in the ears. So doing something like that would restore sensory balance, supporting your hearing, and give a sense of comfort when the environment is challenging, and can interestingly help with things like neck aches. And so, those are some tips for the dystopian world, practical Ayurvedic practices to survive and thrive in a dystopian conditions. And we talked about nasya for sinus, for mind support, building something to stabilize vata, growing herbs to boost immunity, keeping a steady routine, and oiling your ears to protect yourself from harsh climates and the elements that might be a little bit harsh and irritating for our bodies. And, another time we'll do an episode on Ayurvedic wellness tips for utopia. Those will be really different, because even in a perfect world, there's going to be some imbalances, and we can talk about what those might be when the world is perfect. What might you need to do when the world is perfect around you? Gosh, everybody thinks that's what they want, but maybe that also throws us out of balance in some ways. So thank you so much for joining me on this mini dystopian adventure. And just want to remind you to keep your inner fire burning, your doshas balanced, and your mind clear. And I'll see you next time on The Wisdom of the Body. Thank you for dropping in today. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a rating. To learn more about the topics shared on this podcast, visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.